Hi, welcome to How to Grow Your Business with Kevin Willett. As you can see, I have Jennifer Yousem with us from I Heart EBITDA. So, Jen, before we jump in, tell us a little bit about yourself and the business.
I'm the founder of I Heart EBITDA. We're an outsourced bookkeeping, controller, and fractional CFO advisory service for the mid-market.
So, Jen, in this episode, I want to talk a little bit about the importance of budgets and maybe why they're not so important. As a small business owner, we all usually revenue, to be honest, we make a budget. This is our goal for revenue. And then we put it aside and, maybe in October go, hey, am I close? Now, when does it make sense to have a budget, especially from the expense side? Because there's times a lot of us small businesses, we get caught. We don't plan for that expense. Like, oh, I need a new X. And you're like, how much money do I have in the bank? Like, not enough for that. So it's probably best to not only just focus on revenue, but also the expense side and make sure you're going to be profitable at the end of the day. What's your take?
Yes. So I think every business should have a budget, obviously, because that's what I do. And I think why people don't do it is they think it's very daunting. And it doesn't have to be this overly complicated process. Starts with top line revenue, but the expense part of it is where I really want people to focus because you cannot control top line, but you can control your expenses. So for our clients that have a really good understanding of what their expense base is, they are less panicky when it comes time, when the bad times come. So, and I tell people, you don't have to think of a budget as being this exact roadmap that you need to follow. 5 times 20 is the same as 20 times 5, but it's very different. If you're selling 5 products for $20, that's very different than 20 sales at $5 each. They have different costs associated with them. You should just know intrinsically what the cost differences are so you can manage to that.
That makes sense. Because I find a lot of us, especially, if we're making products, we're not monitoring cost. And as we've seen over the years, lumber for a while was crazy. If you're not paying attention to the cost of the inputs, it could really put you out of business because all of a sudden you're building a deck and you're like, I actually lost money on this deck because lumber prices went up. So that's where it's really important to monitor the expenses for any type of changes. I mean, in today's world, like you go to the store to buy eggs, it's like, why are eggs that expensive? But if you own a restaurant, you're not paying attention to that, that's going to hurt your profitability. That's why it's important.
Very important. And you also need to understand of all your expenses, what are the must-haves, right? The cost of goods sold, what goes, the things that go into the thing you sell. And then what are in a dark, tough time, what can I cut? And
Yep.
so when you go through that budget exercise, that's what's super helpful. All right, all things being equal, if I sell 5 of these at $20 each next year, here's how much money I'm going to make. If you're midway through the year and you've sold 1, and you were planning on hiring someone or doing something, you have to rethink that. But if you have a budget, you've already thought about that.
So let's go back to revenue because I find a lot of us look at our best month and when we have it, we multiply it by 12. Everything is going to be amazing. When we have a bad month, we're like, it was just one bad month, Jen. Don't even, yeah, it's fine. So the point I'm trying to make is it got to be realistic too, right? Well, a lot of us like, I'm going to grow by 25% next year. Well, but if you're bringing those expenses in too, like you've already signed on for those, that could really hurt you because you didn't get the growth you wanted. You're hiring a new person, for instance.
Yes. And, obviously, not to sell my services, but the the best thing you can do, even if you don't want to hire an outside person, whatever, bounce your ideas off someone, right? We are our worst kind of, looking at our own businesses is there's a lot of emotion tied up in it. So it's great to say to someone, here's what I'm thinking, right? Right. My best month last year, I did 100,000. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to do 100,000 every month this year. Your friend can probably say to you, that month was blah.
Hmm.
X, Y, and Z happened. That's why you had such a great month. More realistic that you're going to do a $50,000 month. Plan for that. So just, we sometimes call CFOs chief reality officers. The negative people in the office. It's really just about grounding, right? So that you're not making those decisions like, oh, I'm probably going to do 100,000 every month so I can afford to hire 5 new people in January, and then I'm going to have to fire them in June.
Yep. So, Jen, I was thinking of you before the show because I had this experience with one of my close friends last year. We spoke to the Kev. Amazing news, brother. I made the most revenue I've ever made in my life. And she's been in business like a dozen years. Woohoo! Kev, now the bad side of this. I had my highest expenses ever. She goes, so I actually made revenue more than last year, but my profit was nowhere near what it was the year before.
Mhm.
That happens a lot, right? We focus on the top and don't think about the expenses.
It's the biggest mistake that I see is people getting super hyped up on a top line. I could care less about revenue. I really, obviously, my name, I Heart EBITDA.
Yep.
I really am focused on bottom line
Yep.
because a lot of times people can make more doing less. And that's a really hard concept for them to think about. Whether they have a variety of products and maybe some of their products are less profitable.
Yep.
It's hard to say to someone, you'd actually make more money if you stopped selling those products.
It is. It's a hard thing to take. All right, random question. Are there any businesses that don't need to make a budget?
No,
Everyone does.
everyone does.
Yep.
And again, it's just a touch base. Like we have clients that treat their budget like it's a test. Check in monthly and they're like, how did I, whatever. And I'm like, guys, we came in really close, but we had big misses in revenue, but we had a lot of cost savings. So again, there's a lot of ways to get to the same number. You
Yep.
really have to understand how they relate to each other. So that's what I emphasize to people. You can't just focus on top line. You can't just focus on expenses. It's the relationship of them to each other.
I can relate to that, Jen, because there's times when I'd have a budget and I didn't reach it. I'd be sad. Like, I didn't hit it. But then you look at, well, you had this one time unexpected crazy thing happen, and that's why. Or, hey, something happened in the economy, everyone was down. But like you said, if you live and die by it, you're like, all right, and then when you crush it because, people were buying extra supplies to stock up or whatever, you're like, well, Jen, everyone had increased revenue this month. So please don't go spending that money because it's not going to be there next month.
Oh, we saw a lot of
Right?
businesses that we supported had really, really exceptional COVID years
Yeah.
because of the businesses that they were in. And I'm going to say 50% of them are not around.
See, that's just it. You think, oh, this is going to be great. So, Jen, what's the best way for people to reach out to you if they want to learn more about the importance of budgeting and maybe need some help developing a structure for that?
Absolutely. Check out our website, iheartebitda.com.
Awesome, Jen. Appreciate you taking a few minutes to call the show. And as always, thanks for being my friend.
Thanks, Kevin.